John, Katy Perry hit the campaign trail with Hillary. I don't think any of her challengers are really threatening her wide lead much, but having Katy Perry there to help spice things up at her boring campaign events might have helped her people be more motivated. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think the one advantage Democrats have from trotting out celebrities at events like this is they can get people to show up and register to vote. And if they can get people to do that, hey, they've got a leg up. We don't have very many people who people will show up to see. So that does give them a little advantage.
All right, and Mike Tyson endorsed Donald Trump. John, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
It's better than the David Duke endorsement.
That's true.
So, I mean, I think that's a step in the right direction. I'm not a big Mike Tyson fan after the rape charges and all. So,
yeah.
I'm not a huge Tyson fan.
All right, well, a couple of polls came out that have Carson actually leading Trump. John, what do you attribute this shift to, and do you think this is a changing tide?
That is a good question, because I'm trying to figure out exactly why that's happening, and I have some suspicions. I'm wondering, for example, I don't think Trump is up on the air anywhere with ads. So that's one thing I've wondered about. Is he going to spend his own money? That's one of the things that sank Perot, by the way, initially, is he refused, when it came right down to it, to start pouring millions of dollars into ads. Is Trump the same way? Maybe. So I think that's one thing, and I think Ben Carson is a very, very likable guy, and he's not really had a lot of hard questions asked to him because of that. For example, I'll tell you, and as much as I like him, and I do think he's conservative, I think he's unelectable, because one of the things he wants to do is literally get rid of Medicare and replace it with a system where you put money into an account. I don't think a man could be elected president with that platform. So, I mean, has anybody really brought that up about him? Those are the type of things he hasn't been hit with yet, and I think he's just so likable, he's moving right up to the top.
You know, it's interesting, John, the Koch brothers haven't gotten involved in the race yet. Last time they put several $1 million in the race, and I just wonder what you think, why you think they haven't gotten involved. Do you think it has to do with Donald Trump? Because they made some sort of loose insinuations that direction. And do you think they will get involved? And if so, who do you think will be their candidate?
It's hard to say, but, even though the Koch brothers haven't gotten involved, a ridiculous amount of this campaign has been funded by ultra-wealthy people. I want to say something like over half. I mean, it's so many of them, I think it's actually dangerous for democracy. I don't think it's actually healthy as a country to have so many rich people funding these campaigns to such an extent. So I don't know if and when the Koch brothers will get in. They tend to be a little bit more libertarian. Rand Paul has struck out this campaign. I don't know who they could go for. Maybe Cruz. Who knows? We'll have to see as things get a little closer to go time.
All right, Grumpy Cat trending today after the president made a reference to the cat that was made famous by his internet memes. He described Republican politicians like this. Everything is terrible, according to them. They are gloomy. They are like Grumpy Cat. John, actually, I think just the opposite, and I'm actually pretty sure that some psychological polling has proven that conservatives tend to be happier than liberals. But what do you have to say about this?
Well, that is true. Study after study after study shows that conservatives are happier than liberals, and religious people are happier than secular people. Another thought. I'm going to remember that Grumpy Cat thing, and when Obama's out of office and we re-elect a Republican in 2016, I'm going to make sure to remember that and say, gee, you liberals look just like Grumpy Cat now that there's a Republican in the White House.
Yeah, if anybody has an excuse to be grumpy, it would be Republicans under this administration for sure. All right, President Obama also trending today after he called for the schools to reduce the time spent on standardized tests. John, why is the president telling schools how and when they should test students? Isn't this a local issue?
It is, but teachers' unions really hate testing because it shows there's a lot of teachers who don't do a very good job and a lot of schools that don't do a very good job. So they hate this. They hate the fact that these kids, there's going to be testing out there. And there's actually, if you look at it percentage-wise, they spend very little time overall. It's something like 3% of their classroom time is spent on tests. It's not very much. So I don't know. We're going to cut it even further. I mean, I think it's good for us to see how these kids are doing. I want more testing. I wanted these kids to be tested, all at the wazoo, because I found in business, things that get measured get managed. You measure where the kids are at and they're scoring, you can see what you need to do to make them better.
That's such a great point. All right, William Daley, Obama's former chief of staff, says that he's found the root cause for all the turmoil and dysfunction in the Republican Party. He says it's Sarah Palin. First of all, John, a Democrat commenting on what he thinks the problem is for Republicans. And secondly, why Sarah Palin?
I was kind of amazed that was a story. I mean, Democrat doesn't like Sarah Palin is not
not really
breaking news. Just in case, I want to break a little news here in your story. I don't like Barack Obama, and I think he is the root of the problems with the Democratic Party. If anybody would like to do a story on that, I am game. It's about as relevant as this guy saying he doesn't like Sarah Palin.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, we'll just try to make that trend tomorrow. John Hawkins does not like Barack Obama. I think that, and that we could even go one step further and say you think he's what's wrong with Democrat politics today.
Wrong with America.
Wrong with America today, exactly. All right, Lois Lerner trending today. The Justice Department closed the investigation into her targeting of conservative groups while she was the IRS commissioner. They determined that she did nothing wrong, John, and people on social media pretty well ticked about that. John, this woman used her power to target political enemies. There are a few things, really pretty much few things worse than doing what she did. Don't you agree?
I do agree, and it's just another case of the Obama administration investigating the Obama administration and finding out the Obama administration did nothing wrong. There should be a special prosecutor. She belongs in a jail cell. There's a lot of people. There's not, it's not a case where people weren't victimized here. There were people who had their applications held up for years. There are still people whose applications are being held up because they're conservatives. And it just goes to show you there's two standards of justice in America. There's one standard if you're like Hillary Clinton, where you can do practically, she could sacrifice Chelsea to Satan on TV and get a free pass. Like, why are you conservatives picking on her for that? George Bush did the same thing. No, he didn't. Sure he did. That's how that would go. But on the other hand, if you're Lois Lerner, hey, and you're going after Tea Party groups, do it whatever you want. It's just ridiculous that there's a different standard of justice and she gets a pass for it.
Couldn't agree more. John Hawkins, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me on, Gina.
Absolutely. Find us work at rightwingnews.com. And up next.